What did you make of that, seeing that though for the first time? Because you're going into a place for people that you're giving some context here, but obviously there was, as you said, an enormous offensive going on. A lot of people had died, I guess, right prior to you getting there. Like you're going into a war-torn area for the first time. What was that like? Now, did you see combat pretty quickly, or?
Nah, I did not in the Marine Corps. So I showed up on active down at Camp Lejeune, 1980,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing much was going on in the military
Yeah,
in that
post
time.
Vietnam.
Yeah, and everybody was anti-military at that time. Um, I did go. I spent a year in the infantry, and then after that, got asked if I wanted to go to recon, and so I did that, and took another platoon, recon platoon, and in 1982, we went out on a ship on a 6-month float, and we became the first people to go into Beirut in 1982.
Oh, during the bombings and all
During
that.
during the Israeli offensive. So we were that first people. The first time I went into Beirut, we evacuated non-combatants, some American, a lot of French and British citizens. Then we pulled out, went to what's the Navy base by Vesuvius and Cyprus.
Can we type in Navy base, U.S. Navy base, Cyprus? We'll get the name. Leslie's on it. Cyprus Evangelicos Florakis Naval Base?
No, it's the
U.S.
base.
Navy base. Yeah.
U.S. Navy base, Italy. Naples. It's Naples.
Oh, in Italy?
Yeah.
Okay, so not Cyprus.
Oh, yeah, I said Cyprus. So yeah. I'll go back so you can cut that part out.
No, it's all good.
So
it's all good.
We evacuated those non-combatants, mostly British and French, the first time. And I think we did take them and drop them off at Cyprus.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
Then we got called back into Beirut to evacuate the PLO. And
really?
Yeah, so we set up a perimeter and we were controlling stuff. There were some French Foreign Legion there. The Israelis were there.
How'd they feel about you evacuating PLO?
Well, the PLO, that was a whole different thing because, I'm a young guy, right? I remember I saw the car with Yasser Arafat in it, and all those all his people were afraid that the Israelis or somebody were going to try to kill him, while they were say it would come to a checkpoint, and then we would or greet them, and then they would go to the ship where they were evacuated from. And I remember when his car came up that all of his men laid on top of the car. So it was just a sea of bodies on top of the car. And they drove there. I remember thinking as I stood there beside the car, went beside me, that I wonder how much of the world's problems I could end if I would just.
I think we've learned there's always someone to come up right behind them.
There's always someone to come up behind them. But
what did you make of that, seeing that though for the first time? Because you're going into a place for people that you're giving some context here, but obviously there was, as you said, an enormous offensive going on. A lot of people had died, I guess, right prior to you getting there. Like you're going into a war-torn area for the first time. What was that like?
Well, it was nothing like the training we got in the Marine Corps, right? It was all combat. And here we are, peacekeepers. And that was my first time ever interacting with like a local populace and civilians. And, I'd go out in on a Jeep, and you run into an Israeli checkpoint. You'd have to negotiate with them, maybe run into French, negotiate with them. So it was kind of my first kind of free flow, wide open environment. And after we evacuated the PLO, we pulled out and went to Naples, Italy. And we were supposed to get some, leave and vacation, be able to tour Italy. But after we were there several days was when the massacres at the Sabra and Shatila refugee camps happened. So, we had to suddenly load back up on ship and head out.
Can you tell people what that was who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so there were a couple refugee camps in there, and so Israel was still occupying most of Beirut at the time. But when we got there, I mean, Beirut was just in shambles, right? It'd been really bombed out. A lot of death and destruction. And in these refugee camps, someone came in and massacred people. I think some blamed I can't remember if it was Druze that were in the camps or blamed the Druze for coming in and killing the people in the refugee camps.
Yeah, or you're saying Druze, to be clear, not Jews.
Yeah, the D-R-U-Z-E,
sect,
Druze sect. So I wasn't sure who did that, but that put us there. And then, we stayed there till like November of 82. And then were replaced by other Marines. So the barracks that ended up being bombed in 1983 became the headquarters building. And it's funny, a story about that is they started moving everybody into that building. And I kind of got known in the military as a non-compliance person and a rule breaker. And I was like, that's wrong. I'm not moving my guys in there. So I didn't. And my mission that I'd been given was, because I had a reconnaissance platoon. So what are you going to do in peacekeeping and reconnaissance? We were supposed to protect the span of beach where the Navy ships would unload supplies to send to the Marines on shore. So there was a stretch of sand. Well, the thing is that the beach was down on a low level, and then the road above it was elevated. So we were in a real extremely vulnerable place. So I built giant sandbag machine gun positions. I have some of those on my computer that I could share with you later. But that were parallel to the road, so I could, put a hardened machine gun placements to defend us from any attack. And, I know that at one point, I used to go to the nightly meetings there in the building, in the barracks that got bombed. And the colonel one night said, had everybody say, okay, you're all moved in. And they came around to me and said, are you moved in? I said, no, sir. And then he looked at his operations officer and said, I thought you told me everybody was moved in here. And he goes, well, I told him to get his ass in here. And
Mr. Non-Compliance over there.
But by this time, that colonel in charge knew me a little bit. And he looked at me and he goes, is that true? And he hadn't directly ordered me to move in there. So I just said, I was told that my job was to cover this sector by observation. I cannot observe it from inside there, and I have to be able to rotate people on and off position. So that's best done by me occupying that spot. And I didn't move in. And the people that replaced me did. And most of them died.
Oh my God.
Right. But
thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.